In this video, I will be taking you to the beginning of all creation. Lucifer's representation has changed from an angel to more of a demonic being. Today, Lucifer is known all over the world by another name, the devil, and a few others, such as Satan and the Prince of Hell, to name a few. His image has evolved over the years. Now, he is identified as the ultimate enemy of God and the main source of all evil and suffering on this earth. But Lucifer wasn't always an enemy of God. In fact, he was described as God's most perfect creation. So how did everything go so wrong? And what happened to the angelic being that was Lucifer? This is his story. In the beginning, God would create the heavens and his angels. He would also create the archangels, who were the highest in the angelic rank and the most powerful. Among the archangels were Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, but it was Lucifer who shone above them all, standing at the pinnacle of the archangels. It is believed that Lucifer was the most beautiful of all of the angels, and the most beautiful of all of God's creations. Even the other angels recognized this and called him the Son of the Morning, a divine being that was the peak of perfection, power, and beauty. However, over time, Lucifer would soon realize how superior he was to God's other creations, and he became so impressed with his own beauty, intelligence, and power that he began to desire for himself the honor, glory, and position that belonged to God alone. Lucifer's perfection would ultimately be his downfall, as it corrupted him to the extent where his pride and arrogance would lead him to plot against his very creator. So Lucifer was first guilty of the sin of pride, then he was taken by arrogance, and he thought he could become God himself and take his place. In Isaiah 14:12, it states, "I will ascend to heaven, I will raise my throne above the stairs of God, I will sit on the mount of assembly, on the heights of Zaphon, I will ascend to the tops of the clouds, I will make myself like the highest." This conveys Lucifer's lust for power, and how his pride had evolved into something far more sinister. In Ezekiel 28:17, it states, "Your heart became so proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your own splendor." So Lucifer's soul was corrupted by his own splendor. In his eyes, he was so perfect that he thought he should ascend to God's height. This betrays that nothing and no one is perfect, even what might be perceived as the peak of perfection. Lucifer's own magnificence had corrupted him to the extent where he began taking steps to actually overthrow God and take command of the heavens himself. He would begin amassing an army by poisoning the minds of angels who would listen to him. The angels that joined him would come to be known as fallen angels. Once he believed his forces were strong enough, they would wage war. This is known as the war in heaven. Lucifer and his army would now march up the heavens, with their destination being the throne of God. Eventually, Lucifer and his army would confront God. Here, God would express disappointment, saying he thought Lucifer was his friend. Even with this monstrous betrayal, he gave him a second chance, but at this point, Lucifer was so consumed by his own arrogance and pride that he did not use the wisdom that God had bestowed upon him, and he decided war would be the better course of action. God then summoned a mighty army of angels, and the archangel Michael would face Lucifer and his forces. A climactic battle for the heavens was about to take place between Lucifer and his fallen angels, and the archangel Michael and his still faithful angels. Lucifer and his fallen angels would then fight against God's forces, and in the fighting, Lucifer would transform himself into a great dragon. In Revelations 12:7, it states, "Then a war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. The dragon and his angels fought back, but he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. So the archangel Michael and Lucifer would engage in a climactic battle, but ultimately Michael would best Lucifer and cast him out of heaven. But how did Michael defeat the pinnacle of perfection that was Lucifer? He simply had God on his side, and God is all-powerful. Once Lucifer and his fallen angels were cast out of heaven, Lucifer would forever be angry at God. When God created his children, who were made in his own image, known as mankind, Lucifer would take the form of a snake and would trick Eve into eating the apple from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Before Adam and Eve ate from the tree, they were innocent, but eating from the tree gave them additional knowledge. It gave them the ability to conjure up negative and destructive acts such as shame and evil. God would then banish them from the Garden of Eden. He cursed man to a lifetime of hard labor, followed by death, and the woman to the pain of childbirth and subordination to her husband. Lucifer had just tricked and corrupted God's children, who had themselves changed by eating the fruit, now knowing good and evil. Mankind has been responsible for much evil and will continue to commit these acts due to the vengeance of the fallen angel Lucifer. Now, that's the narrative according to many Christians, but let's go deeper. Lucifer is a Latin word, and in Christian tradition it is regarded as the angelic name for Satan before he fell from grace. But the actual Hebrew word from which Lucifer is derived from is Hellel, which means light bearer or the shining one. So the word Lucifer or Hellel appears in the Bible only once. In Isaiah 14:12 it states, "How art thou fall from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didn't weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the highest of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit." So who is this text addressing? There is much debate about the topic. Some people believe it is referring to the king of Babylon, due to a passage in Isaiah 14:4, which states, "Take up this proverb against the king of Babylon." Many people, however, believe the passage regarding the son of the morning is about the fallen angel. For at the beginning it says, "How art thou fallen from heaven?" So the king of Babylon would have to have resided in heaven for that to apply, and the only beings that resided there were the angels and archangels. So it must have been Lucifer, the fallen angel, to whom this passage refers to. Now the name Satan means adversary, is also known as the devil, which means the accuser. However, the name Satan doesn't really make much sense, as Satan may be viewed as God's rival, but the difference in power is incomprehensible, as there is only one eternal God, and Satan is a created being, made by God's hand. Since Satan also has immense power and influence, we can say from a scripture point of view that Satan was once an angel. In 2 Corinthians 11:14 it states, "Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light." Jesus also reinforces this, where he says in Luke 10:18, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." So again, from a scripture point of view, I would say that the texts are referring to Lucifer and not the king of Babylon. So Lucifer, or Hellel, is most likely a name for the angelic version of Satan before he was cast out from heaven and his fall from grace. What do you think about the story of Lucifer? To me, it conveys that even the being of perfection can be corrupted by one's own inner thoughts. Pride can turn to arrogance, as Lucifer showed when he declared war against God and his faithful angels. Once consumed by pride, he is now consumed by envy, and his revenge was again poisoning mankind, as he did the fallen angels, and is the root cause of all evil and sin in the world. If you liked the video, make sure to like, comment and subscribe. If you want to support the channel further, consider becoming a patron, where I will bring your video recommendations to life, exclusively for my patrons. Anyway, I'll see you all soon for another History Profile.